In this video I'm going to show you how you can take your engine out, replace your clutch, and then put your engine back in. I have slides that show you the steps that you need to take, the order that you need to take them in, and I also give you information in there such as torque ratings that you have to tighten your bolts up to when you reinstall them. So let's get started. First I'll show you how you can test that your clutch is slipping. We're driving along, we're in 5th gear, and if I push some gas, RPM increases, catches, and then it slips for a tiny bit. So if you've ruled out everything else, such as the operating cylinder or any adjustments, and you're pretty sure the clutch is worn out, then you're going to want to proceed with replacing the clutch. You can pay $2,000 or do it for about 500 bucks. Doing it yourself will save you a lot of money, but it'll take a little bit of time, probably a weekend or two. Here's a list of the basic tools and materials that I used. The main thing is to have the engine crane and balancer. If you don't have those, you might want to buy them or rent them. And while taking things apart, I put everything inside an egg carton, and I'll show you that here. So for the bolts that you can't put back in there, such as the engine mount bolts, you can use an egg carton and write down the step number so that you remember where that goes back. Just make sure you don't kick this whole thing over, or else you'll be in big trouble. So I've got 7 slides that give you steps of what to take out, what to put back in. If you complete all the steps, then you should be done the entire job. So you can download this from below, print it off, and use that as a guide. First step is to reduce the fuel pump pressure. So remove 12mm bolts in the back seat, move there and over there, lift up the seat and disconnect the fuel pump relay, which is this one. Don't worry about that one, just unplug that one. We've disconnected the fuel pump relay. We're going to turn it on. It should run for a bit and then stall. And once it stalls, just go for 5 seconds. Now your fuel pressure should be 0. Now disconnect the battery and continue. So we've taken the intercooler out. You just need to take out those 2 bolts, the 3 across the here, and 4 pipes. This one, this big one at the front, small one underneath, and that one. And then you can just slide it on out of there. And then we've got the intercooler out. In the next couple steps, we're going to remove some guards, take the radiator fan out, drain the radiator, remove that, remove the overflow tank, and then we're going to put some protection in front of the AC condenser coil. You need a good piece of wood or something in front of that, otherwise if you poke it with something sharp, you could release refrigerant everywhere, and that's a really bad thing. So make sure you put some wood in front of the AC condenser unit. So to drain the radiator, you're going to have to remove 3 bolts on the bottom and 4 plastic clips. Here's one, you just got to get underneath it, push the plastic away from the bottom plastic piece. So on the passenger side of the radiator, there's the valve right there, the drain valve. So just get your arm down there and see if you can turn that. Once you turn it, the fluid should come out of there. There we go. So open that up. You can open up the overflow to help it start pouring out quicker. Let's see. So while it's draining, go ahead and remove your overflow hoses on top. Once it's all done draining, you should be able to lift the radiator fan straight up. So I'm going to remove the heater hoses here and here. You can just go from on top with an 8mm socket. So just break the seal by twisting on the tube. You can hear it come off, just turn it and make sure you put a bucket underneath. So now we're going to take out the alternator. You loosen this, and loosen that. And that'll make it so the belt gets loose. Check your belt, make sure there's no cracking. So set that aside, and we'll take out the AC compressor next. And then for this, it's reverse threaded, so you're going to want to loosen it to bring this closer towards you, or go counterclockwise to bring it closer towards you. That's important to note because it's probably the only reverse threaded part of the vehicle. So now we've got the AC belt off. It's got 4 grooves instead of 5, so you can't really mistake the AC belt for the alternator belt. And once again, check this belt for any damage. This one looks good, so we'll just put that aside. Now we're going to completely remove the alternator. So just remove this bolt, and take out the connectors after you've got it out. So there's one. And to remove this connector here, you just push down on it, as you can see, and pull. Make sure you pull on the connector itself, otherwise you'll rip the cables right out. This one here is another 12. There you go. That's the alternator. You can move on to taking out the power steering pump. That's got 3 bolts. A 12mm down here, and the back right there. Now you're going to want to switch to the universal joint and get the one in the back. So now that we've got this thing out, you'll want to remove this 10mm bolt and maybe this tank so that you can freely move it around. Then set it aside and tie it to the side of the car or something. So unplug this from the power steering pump, and then you can lift that off and put it to the side. So to remove the AC compressor, we're going to remove the mount, these 3 bolts, instead of trying to remove the AC compressor from the mount, because there's a bolt that's hidden behind something. The universal joint is going to help you get in behind things. And you should use a breaker bar because they're in there pretty tight. But once you break it, it comes out all the way pretty easily. Now behind the AC compressor there's also a nut way back there, and you're going to have to use the universal joint to get in there. So if you don't have that, you're pretty much hooped because there's no other way to get this nut out. Onto the nut, you want to use a breaker bar and snap it. And there we go, we got it out. So you're going to have to install that in the same way. It's going to be awkward, but it can be done. So now we've got the AC compressor mount off. You can stick that back in so you can chain to it. So now when you go to chain onto this, you can stick your chain through there, or if it doesn't fit, you can just stick your shackle through it. Like that. You can hang on to it like this. This shackle is good for up to 705 pounds. Now in the next couple steps, we're going to remove the wiring from the engine, which consists of the wiring harnesses, the oxygen sensor wires, which there's probably 2 of them, and the one on the passenger side is pretty hard to get to, but I'll show you how to do that. Disconnect the grounding cable. So we're going to remove 3 here. These 2 are oxygen sensors. This one's a bunch of engine sensors. And then we're going to remove 3 over here. There's 1, 2, 3, and 1 ground cable over here. So after you've removed these electrical connections, you can go remove the ground. You'll also want to remove the two electrical connections by the battery terminal. Get down in there. Or you can remove the battery completely, and that'll make that removal a lot easier. So to gain clearance so that your right side has clearance to lift the engine out, remove this oxygen sensor in the right wheel well. And you'll need a oxygen sensor removal socket, and that'll help you remove that. Okay, so we removed the oxygen sensor. All we needed was a 2.5-inch deep oxygen sensor remover. This is for 22mm or 7/8 inch, and you're going to need a 1 1/8 inch, that's what this one is, to turn it off, crank it out. It doesn't allow you to fit this 1/2-inch socket in there because there's no clearance, so you need a pretty big wrench. Like I'm tiny. If you want to remove this brake booster, I'll just do it from this side. So just pull that off, and then you're going to want to twist on the hose while pulling off to make it easier. Come on. There we go. I've taken the cruise control module off. It was right here. It just gives you more room to work. And it's just over there.
I want to see what it is. Transmission dipstick.
Their transmission dipstick in the back. Alright, now we're going to remove the exhaust downpipe, and that requires removing the 3 bolts from underneath. And we're going to remove 2 bolts from on top. You may need to grind off the bolts if your exhaust manifold is stuck on. Oh yeah. Chop it right off. So now that we've got the exhaust downpipe off, we can move on to the next step. I had to grind some of the bolts off because they were rusted on there pretty bad, but you can just buy some new bolts and nuts, and then if you need to, grind those off later when you need to take it apart again. Now in the next couple steps, we're going to loosen the transmission and the engine from the vehicle, and we're going to lift it up in preparation of splitting them apart. Alright, so the engine mount bolts are here. That one. And right there. Transmission mount bolts. That's the transmission mount. So connects on here, and then this is where it actually attaches to frame. You just want to. So if you've got a breaker bar, you can just get the socket on there, connect the breaker bar, and just crack it. So once you've disconnected that, those 2 bolts, your transmission can freely move up and down. And the engine mount bolts, which are right here. So now to get the engine mount bolt out, I'm just going to put this on there. And then use the breaker bar. Just give it. Now we're going to remove the clutch slave cylinder here. And 2 14s on the bottom. Right there, right there. If you're using wrenches, you can put one wrench on another to use as a breaker bar. Okay, to take out the clutch release bearing, you'll need to stick in a 3/8 inch hex Allen key and unscrew that. Once you take the plug out, there's this thing. Okay, so the bolt from step 3 works in pulling it out if you have a flathead screwdriver. There goes the clutch release bearing, totally released.
Okay.
Now we just remove the 2 bolts holding the pitch stopper in place. Next up, we'll want to mark the bottom, middle, and top fuel lines, and then you'll want to remove those and just wrap it with a rag or something so that the gasoline doesn't leak all over the place. So I've removed the top one just by grabbing onto it and cracking the seal. And then I removed the middle one from up there so I have more space. And then I'm going to take out this grounding here. And then once I have the grounding out, you can just take out the bottom one. See that? And then you can pull on it and it'll slide right off. So now you'll want to chain the engine to the engine crane and lift the engine up slowly while supporting it with the jack. So you lift it a bit and then you can jack it a bit. Lift it up all the way to clear the engine mount bolts, and then you can jack up and hold the transmission, and then you can split the block right along there. Once you split the block, you can separate the engine, support the transmission before you do that, and then lift the engine all the way out. So there's not really any good place on the left side to lift the engine from, so I'm using cord. And I've calculated that you only really need 2 loops to hold 240 pounds worth, but since this thing holds 60 pounds each, we've calculated that having about 7 or 8 loops gives you a factor of safety of more than 4. So we're happy with that. So now that we have the engine mount on, we can lift up the engine slowly. Lift it up nice and straight. Okay, so check underneath, make sure you've cleared the engine mount bolts. Once you've done that, you know you're high enough. You can split the block from the transmission, and then you can lift the engine right out. And you need to support the transmission before you go ahead and split anything. I'm going to stick this big piece of wood in between so that the jack has clearance. So if you haven't done so already, remove the starter. It just is held in with 2 14mm bolts. Then remove the rest of the transmission bolts from on top, and then you can split the block from the transmission. The trick to splitting it apart is to shift it around a lot because there's 2 pins on the bottom that you got to step out. Okay, so you've got to remove 2 bolts underneath the starter, and then 2 bolts on the top right and 2 bolts on the bottom right. So if you've got all the bolts out, now you just wiggle around the engine a bit, and then you can, there's a lip here and this piece of metal, so I'm going to wiggle around the engine a bit and separate it. You can see the engine's coming apart slowly. You can get a couple flathead screwdrivers into the crack, then you could probably split it slowly. You're going to want to be careful, you don't want to damage the aluminum too much. So by shifting around the engine a lot, we've got it split apart. Last thing to do is release the clutch release bearing, and I'll show you a quick video here of how that works so you can figure out how to split it apart easily with a flathead screwdriver. In this vehicle, the clutch system is a pull system instead of a push. Most of them, the pressure plates, you push into them with a thrust bearing to release the pressure plate, but this one, it's a pull. So this is the pressure plate side. The thrust bearing goes into this, clips in, and then when you pull it out, you see how this is a locking ring. It can come out if this locking ring is out in the open, but when you push on the clutch pedal, it pulls on it, and that puts it into that cylinder, and then now this thing can't be pulled out, so it'll pull back on it and then release these springs, or pull on the springs. And so when you're removing the old one, you won't be able to remove it if you pull on it. You have to push in, and then see that ring in there? There's that ring that moves out with it. You push that in, and then you can get your finger in there, or a screwdriver, and then keep that ring in and then pull out. Just like this. So you push it in, and you pull it out. You gotta hold that in. And if this thing slides out, you won't be able to pull it out anymore. Level it out a bit. There we go. there's the old clutch. There's actually almost no wear on the surface, but we'll have to take it to a machine shop and get it machined anyways. It's a Leighton flywheel, so it's good to keep this one in there. So now we got to take these out. So to keep it from rotating, you just put a wrench here on the pin, the bottom two pins. Just put a wrench there and then put it into this pin. And you're going to want to use a breaker bar and a 14mm. Flywheel out. We're going to take that to get machined. So make sure you clean your bell housing, inside of the bell housing, so that there's no contamination from the previous clutch. That'll allow the new clutch to break in properly and not be exposed to any contaminants. You should probably have 2 cans of this. You could do it with 1, but it's easier to do it with 2. So here we have the XD lightweight flywheel that came off the car. We've remachined it. It cost 45 bucks and it's supposed to be level and flat. So if you take this level, put it across, you put an edge on that, you can see that there's a little bit of light showing through the middle, so it's not perfectly flat. But what do you expect for 45 bucks at Lord? And make sure you clean it. Clean off all the grease with brake cleaner, and then make sure you don't touch the surface. If you get any grease on that, your clutch is going to start slipping and it can create some burning, some hot spots. So just make sure you blast it off and then wipe it off with a rag. Now we're going to put in the new pilot bearing. Okay, so now that it's flush against the surface, it's ready to go in. Here we have the new clutch. It's an XD stock, the standard replacement clutch. So before you start anything, you should check to make sure that this spline fits into the old clutch plate, or that this clutch plate slides onto your spline in the car and slides back and forth smoothly, because it's got a slide. That's where you're going to put the lubrication that comes with the kit. And then here's a pilot bearing for your machined flywheel or new replacement flywheel. Here's your throat bearing. You should replace that even if yours is okay. And you're going to want to use some brake cleaner. Wash this sucker down, get rid of all the grease. There should be no grease on that one already, but there'll be grease on this one because they put it there to keep it from oxidizing. So clean those spines, making sure it's got no burrs on it, and then take your new clutch plate and slide it on there to make sure that there's a smooth surface interaction. It's got to slide back and forth very smoothly. If there's any roughness, you can file it off or fix it somehow. Now we know that parts fit, we can install it to the flywheel. So put a little bit of grease on the spline. You don't want too much, otherwise it'll spin and come out onto the clutch. Wipe off most of the excess. You want it in every single spline. I've missed a couple because it's not going to be able to flow into other splines, so you need every spline to have some lubrication. There we go. Wipe off the excess. Now you install the throat bearing and the fork. And when you slide in the clutch release bearing pin, put some high quality grease. And make sure you put the worn face towards the front of the car and the unworn face to the back, because the back is where all the force goes. And then you're going to want to put in a plug on the other side. Now to replace the spark plugs, just remove the igniter coil using a 12mm socket, pull it out, and you'll need a 5/8 inch spark plug remover socket. It's good to remove the spark plugs now and replace them because you've got the engine out and it's easier to remove the 4 of them on either side. Now all we have to do is mount this up onto the engine. So figure tighten if you're Superman. Make sure you use permanent Loctite in all your bolts before you put them in. Tightening a little more. You'll want to torque down the flywheel until it's about 52.8 foot-pounds each one. So do that diagonally and slowly make your way up to that point. So we've reached the torque of this torque wrench, and now all the bolts are pretty much torqued up to spec, as you can see. So there we go. Now the flywheel's on there. Next step is to install the clutch plate with the install tool. So take your clutch, put in the locating tool, and then line it up with your flywheel. Make sure your flywheel's got no grease on it. Just double check. Looks pretty good. Put that in. And slide that on. So the pressure plate needs to go up on top of that. Now make sure you line up these 3 pins with these 3 holes. So there we go. That's in. So now you take the bolts and you got to screw it on in a diagonal pattern once again, because this pressure plate's got to push down onto the clutch evenly. To show you what it looks like, here's the clutch spinning freely inside the pressure plate and flywheel. So when you have your clutch pedal engaged all the way down, you're releasing the pressure plate and it's coming back, so it allows your clutch to spin freely, and the clutch is connected to your wheels. So this is why you can just roll around sort of in neutral when you have your clutch pedal in. When you release your clutch pedal slowly, the pressure plate pushes down onto it, watch, and it stops spinning. And you also shouldn't ride around with your clutch pushed in, because being pushed in, the throwout bearings wearing out, it's overheating. Next we'll need to torque on the pressure plate bolts to 11.6 foot-pounds. That's not very much, so make sure your lock washers are not flat. If they're flat, they're not going to lock anything, so make sure they're like this. You can also bend them out like this if they're not already like this, or get new ones. And make sure you put permanent Loctite on this so they don't come out. Now when you're bolting down the pressure plate, it's very important to go diagonally, because you're closing this entire gap here, and that's all spring force. So you don't want that spring force to be applied on the clutch unevenly. So make sure you go quarter turn on each side, and just keep on bringing that quarter turn in. And go diagonally all the way through. You have to make sure you do this. If you just cheap out and you just get lazy and just go all the way on one side, you're gonna end up bending that pressure plate, or bending that clutch with a pressure plate. So now, since we've got everything back together, thrust bearings in, we're ready to slide the engine in, and once the engine's in, you push this forward to lock it into place. Now this part of lifting up the engine and sliding it over is slow going, so I fast forwarded it, and it takes this is about 8 minutes of video, so it takes about 8 minutes to lift it up, slide it across, and get it into the compartment. Just go slow and make sure you don't break any hoses, run into anything. And when you're wiggling the engine into the transmission, that's the hard part. You see those 2 pins on the bottom of the engine? You've got to get those 2 pins in, and they slowly walk in. You can't just slide it in easily. But just take your time and you'll get it done. I'm going to bring it down a couple inches. That's good.
Clear my side.
So while you wiggle it in, screw in the bolts, and that'll help you guide it in. And then as you wiggle it in, it'll just move in further.
So you've got to tighten the upper 3 bell housing bolts to 36.9 foot-pounds.
Next, you install your starter and connect it up. Now you'll want to push the release fork forward so that the thrust bearing goes into it, locks in place, and you'll want to reinstall the slave cylinder and the spring like that. So after you have the bolts tightened, take out the transmission jack and then lower the engine onto the 2 mounting bolts below. And then you can just take these things off. Now we install the fuel lines, bottom, middle, and top, using our markings. Next, install the engine mount bolts. And then install the transmission mount bolts. Next, we install the pitching stopper. Now we've got the pitching stopper in, we install the downpipe. I used some exhaust system joint sealer between the turbo and the downpipe. And when we install electrical connections, it's a good idea to put copper grease on it. It'll keep it from corroding and make sure the electrical connection stays good. Now we're going to install the oxygen sensor that we took out, connect all the oxygen sensors, and connect all the wiring that we took out. There's 2 here, a couple back there, and some over there. Take your oxygen sensor and reinstall it in the same way we took it out. And install your electrical connections. Make sure there's no dirt in there. And then you can use zip ties to tie it up. Next step is to reinstall the AC compressor. To do that, we need to remove the AC compressor mount. You want to connect it and put in 4 bolts. You can install the power steering pump. Now you install the slider. Alright, next we install the AC belt. It's a small one and it goes on the inside. So you just slide that on right there. And make sure your pulley is all the way up, which it is, and it just pops right on. And then all you gotta do is tighten this. So actually if you screw inwards, it'll go down, which is opposite of, see how it's slowly going down? Alright, so now tighten it until there's about 1 centimeter of deflection when you push down on it lightly, like that. So it should bend about 1 centimeter. And that's how you know your belt is not too tense and it's tight enough. Now we move on to install the alternator belt in the same fashion. So you can roll it and it'll pop right on. In. That's in. I'll tighten this sucker up until you've got about 1 centimeter of deflection once again. So there you go. Then you just lock it in place. Tighten that one to lock it in place, and you can continue on. So now we're going to connect the heater core hoses. You just pop those on. You probably mark top as top, so you can match it up. So now we can remove the protection for the AC condenser. Now after you install the radiator, you install this tubing. I saw you a long time ago.
When?
Oh.
There we go.
When I was a personal lender, I know how much they make.
So now just install the coolant tank, the coolant overflow tank. Just a couple 10mm bolts. So now you want to fill it up with some pre-mixed 50-50 antifreeze. Fill it up there, and then just top this one off.
Let's go tomorrow.
Now that we have the intercooler in, you need to bolt in this piece, these 3 bolts, and then you need to connect the tubing on this side, and then you need to connect this tubing right here, and then bolt down the intercooler on either side. Now reinstall the air filter box. Now we're going to install our freshly cleaned and oiled K&N air filter. So now you want to reinstall your window washer fluid tank. The one from the right goes onto the right side, the one from the left goes onto the left side. Now you'll want to reinstall your battery tray and your battery. Now you've got everything hooked up, put in the battery. Reconnect your fuel pump relay under the back seat or install the fuse again, and then we're ready to start it up. So we just hooked up the battery. Turn it on, put in your clutch, put it in neutral, and start it up. Yay! I'll put it into first, and then let out the clutch. Okay, I'm letting out the clutch. It should slow down the motor. Oh, perfect! It works good. It's grabbing great. So turn off the car and then go for a test drive. So to reduce your free play to about 0.5 centimeters, you just unlock this bolt, and then you can unscrew this to reduce your free play, and you can tighten it this way to get more free play. So obviously we have a new clutch, so we're going to want to push this out, and right now I have 0 free play. Bring it back, so it's about 0.5 centimeters. You want a little bit, but not much. Okay, so now we're going to test its performance. There we go, 0 to 100. This thing works very well. Completely grabby clutch, no problems. So that's how you change the clutch on a 2002 Subaru Impreza WRX. Hope you enjoyed watching. So here we are on the back roads driving the Subaru Impreza. The clutch has been fixed and we're taking it out camping. It's been pretty reliable, still grabby clutch. It's still in the break-in period, but it works pretty well. Look at that view. Going slow because we don't want to damage our tires. Pretty bumpy road, sharp rocks. We've got this Subaru loaded up with probably 500 pounds of gear. It's still going strong. We've done this camp trip probably 5 times. Subaru's made a good car. There probably isn't any other better car than this to take camping.
Happy 4th of July to everybody! Oh, nice. Who wants to have a Roman candle war? He's back! Oh, God. Yeah! There won't be no trouble. Colas cleans it. Some gangster, God.
What a turbinate.
You got one?
Is that what you did to gut someone or what?
I mean, fish. Alright, where's the breast?
Well, we live in a dangerous part of town.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we just heard some coolio around here.
No, oh, fuck.
Where's the phone? No, Doug. Man, they're playing you, Doug.
They're playing it,
They're
dog. Oh,
playing
that's
you.
totally cooked.
Cut it like this, bud.
Huh?
Cut it
No, I'm just checking if it's cooked. What happens if it's... Dude, that's totally cooked.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect.
Check the thighs, because,
Oh, in here?
the thighs.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm a chicken expert.
Looks good.
I used to do this for work, man.
For what? Safeway?
Yeah.
That's good. Actually?
Yeah, I did.
Those $10 chickens, that was you that was inspecting them? I can tell you right now that mine was overcooked.
Don't worry, Victor. Overcooked's fine as long as it's not raw. That's what the whole pretty legit, man. Yeah. Look how juicy it is.
Good? Yeah.
Good, man. Let's go.
They're playing you, Doug.
They're playing you, dog.
He's gonna try it first.